Hello, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed. We haven't heard from Avril in a long time, but let me tell you, that song was so relevant for today's discussion. While we're here, guys, if you don't know me already, I am Christina Herrera. I am a vision partner and a change soulmate with Andrew and Hugo. So glad you're here with us. Guys, jump in the chat. Let us know where you're from. We always love to know how intergalactic our team is that we've got here, that we've got speaking with us today. And we're super excited to get in. Oh, look, Australia. I love it. So good afternoon or almost good evening to everyone in the USA and good morning to everyone in Australia. So today we have a really, really exciting topic that we're discussing, making the complex simple. And I will say I absolutely love this topic. And what we're going to do today is Andrew is going to walk you through what this really means at Earth to Mars and some of the really cool and funky tools that he uses to help to make that complex simple. And then we're going to turn over to Sabrina Warner. She's an incredible woman who is going to educate us on how the military, some of the skills and the tools that the military is using can be leveraged in organizations today to help to facilitate this process, and the leadership development program that they've developed to help to facilitate this in organizations. Are we pumped? Yeah. Well, it's great to be here, guys. Keep it coming. Hi, everyone. I think North Carolina. Hi from Durham. Yeah. Jersey. Geelong in Australia. Sydney. Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to turn over to Andrew.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day, mate. Wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in the universe, it is so good to see this amazing turnout today. Oh, that's an interesting one. So really good to see people with videos on. I love that as well. And clearly, given the turnout, things are obviously getting really, really complicated out there. Who would agree? If things aren't feeling a little bit complicated, a little bit uncomfortable, where have you been? Probably in lockdown like people in Sydney right now, including myself. But let's get right into the juicy content. I had a very complicated task because I knew that Christina would ask me to introduce this, and I had the task of finding what is the most complicated example of our human race that I can bring to the table. And I didn't want to go and explore all the examples we already know. We know the Googles, we know the Facebooks, we know the PepsiCos. And the two I came up with was obviously the military, having spoken a lot with Sabrina and the work that we do and partner with Sabrina. She's going to share a lot about that, so I'm not going to steal her thunder. And obviously Jason's here as well. He's the CIO of 06. So they'll go into that. But I thought, well, hold on. If they're covering the military, what spacey example can I give perhaps? And guess what? I think I found it, guys. I tossed and turned, and this is it. Isn't that amazing? Now, if you're wondering what appalling image I'm showing at this ungodly hour, who can tell me what we're looking at here? A donut, right? Close. I'm feeling hungry now.
We're looking at a wormhole.
We're looking at a wormhole, exactly. Marianne said black hole. Clark said black hole as well. Absolutely. And let's be honest, folks, we have scientific proof. I'm just going to let some more people into the airlock. We have scientific proof that this exists. If you don't believe that, go speak or read some Stephen Hawking's. We know they exist. We know they're there, but these black holes have been a mystery to our species for two reasons. One, they're complicated and then they're very, very far away. We're talking light years away. But two, we've never seen one. We know they exist. Now, if you can't see something, and this is the beauty of human-centered design, when we can visualize things, often it makes things possible for us. So this is an example of taking something so complicated, but being able to take a photograph. And in 2019, we as a species were able to photograph what a black hole looks like. And this is it. Now, how did we do this? If you're interested in this topic, there's a really great documentary on Netflix. It's called Black Holes, The Edge of All Unknown. I think Stephen Hawkins does a little bit of a debut. But what's really interesting about this project, instead of trying to use an old school sort of technology to try photograph this black hole somewhere, which would probably take thousands and thousands and thousands of years, or go the other way and try to build this bigger, better, ginormous Earth-sized telescope to try and attempt take that much. They took a very different approach to this, and they realized, well, there's an entire community around the world that's not just passionate about black holes, but passionate about staring into space. And we're talking about not just big companies, big institutions, or big government agencies. We're also talking about individuals who have these very sophisticated telescopes to look and stare at the sky. And what they did is they decided, well, we don't know how to do this. Let's engage the community. Let's brainstorm. Let's use a bit of human-centered design to say, well, how can we get everybody together and solve this problem? And what they came up with is they figured, well, what if instead of us trying to create this telescope, just like cloud computing, what if we take the telescopic power of every single telescope across the world? And if we can have billions of people coordinated, aiming our telescopes at this black hole and taking photos, we can then use our amazing technology afterwards to stitch it together and form this incredible picture that I've shown you. So what you're looking at in 2019 is the culmination of so many different perspectives coming together and forming a clear picture so that we can finally see and know that these anomalies actually exist. And seeing is believing, right? For some. So this is quite a really powerful analogy. What if we took a similar approach with business problems, with change issues, with leadership concerns, with what's going on in our markets, with what's going on in our planet? And we actually, instead of assuming that I need to have all the information or only the experts will know it, what if we start including other people's telescopic perspectives on the issue? And this is exactly how human-centered design works for us, is instead of us going and thinking, here's the board's decision, or here's the leader's decision, or here's the experts with a doctor in front of their name, that's what they say. We say, okay, we know some stuff, but what if we ask everybody else and work together and formulate all the different ideas out there and converge around the topic? And what we found at Earth Mars, having used human-centered design for quite some time, is the results happen quicker and quicker. So this is how it works, is we can sort of use this analogy to talk about what happens in a business. And this is what I've seen over the years, is the key lesson for me from this amazing documentary is we've got to mind this black hole of siloed thinking. And I know when I say siloed thinking, I know everyone in front of me can relate to that in some shape or form and has experienced it. I'm seeing a lot of nods right now. And this is what happens with siloed thinking, is we have all this complexity around a business decision, competition, our market, around what's happening with our climate. And people then talk, we get together and we have either a sponsor or an executive or a group of executives in a steering committee, and they come up with the solution based on their perspective on the problem. So that's like me taking a telescope and looking at that black hole with just my view. And I probably only see that much of the problem. And then what we do is we get clever project and program managers and change managers and all of that, and maybe some technology people, and we converge around a project plan. But what we do is anything out of that project plan is out of scope. And we always have these little blinkers. And what happens is more and more information starts revealing itself as we run a project, test it, do pilots. And often that just becomes a risk that needs to be mitigated or out of scope if you're dealing with consultants. And we keep pushing forward at this and we keep ignoring this until finally we turn around and go, well, why does this project fail? Why is this not working? Why didn't we pick this up in advance? And it's really amazing that we keep going in this cycle so many times. But what we've found is there's a really beautiful way to break the cycle. And that starts with a little bit of humility. And it is hard because sometimes, we've invested a lot in our sales, in our development, in our education, maybe, in our clients, in our products. But the real people who are getting success in this new age of hyperconnectedness turn around and be real leaders and say, well, I don't know how to do this exactly. This is a really complicated, but what if we found out together? What if I get a sample of people within my organization at multiple levels, get different perspectives and stitch that together and then converge into what we all think the right way is, or make a decision to do something else. And that's exactly how it works. It's almost like casting a net and getting lots of different perspectives in. We diverge around it, and then we start being a bit critical together and start converging around different solutions, different options. We then converge around a solution. And what I love, especially as a change manager, is instead of it being the solution or my solution, which we have to convince people is the right way, you've already got a solution which belongs to everybody. And everyone from the beginning of your program actually has the buy-in to this. So this is what I love about not just the world of human-centered design, but also the world of technology. We are in a space now, and also thanks to what's happened in the pandemic, people are a lot more okay with dialing into a Zoom, using a mobile device to scan in and give feedback and input. And if you don't believe me, just think about your consumer life. You know, if you're watching Netflix, you're being asked for feedback all the time on the go. And these are the companies that are really keeping up with things changing, because what I know about complexity, it doesn't just stay complex, it keeps evolving. So this is why we really value it. And what we found is if you combine HCD with collaborative technology, magic happens. You can get buy-in quicker, people feel included, people are more energized and engaged around it. So I know from the feedback of a lot, I think this is our 5th space for change. I'm really, really excited about it. A lot of the feedback is people are also really keen on some tools. So obviously I'm at Ertemaz, Christine and I have like lots of tools around HCD, but I thought, what's the one that time and time again has helped me get a start to scope out something that's very complex, doing all the sexy stuff I'm describing, okay? And it's called an abstraction ladder. You can Google it, it's universal content. But what we do is we put a problem in front of people. And let's just take this as a simple example. How might we make the complex simple in my organization? And by my, I mean all of you. And what we do is instead of sitting in a little steerco, or me as a project manager or change manager, sitting and filling out spreadsheets and thinking and trying to make the assumptions myself, we gather. We avoid the pitfall of jumping to a solution. And that's really hard, especially if you're a person who loves helping, especially if you're a consultant who's very people-focused and solution-driven. Because I found the first hole is to not make assumptions and jump in and assume the solution before we understand a little bit more about complexity. So what I love about this abstraction ladder is it allows us in a very divergent way to explore the root causes first. And we don't just assume our own root causes from our own telescopic perspective. We gather perspectives, either of a sample of diverse people across our organization, or using technology and actually getting feedback from a lot of people in the organization, just depending on what you're trying to achieve. And then what we do is we pose that question to the group. And we say, how might we make the complex simple in my organization? But instead of jumping to solution, we, in a very structured way, ask why. And I'm sure some of you have heard of root cause analysis or the 5 whys to do it. This is just a really good way to do it, just collaboratively. And we do it in rounds 3 to 5 times. And we ask, well, why is this a problem? Why is complexity and why do we need it simple in our organization? And everyone then gives feedback. We then ask again, why? Why is that feedback a problem? And by doing that, we're actually demystifying a lot of the complexity. Just like trying to stitch together what's happening with that black hole, we can do this with ideation. We can do this with our people's perspective, and even without our organizations, with customers. And then once we are all clear and debriefed, we can then ask, well, how specifically? How? What can we do? And again, get a broad range of different ideas, and then together vote on what we think works, what we think doesn't, and using the law of averages and group or hive thinking, as we call it, to converge around a way forward. And what I love about this in my experience of using it is people feel included in the problem. So instead of sitting there being anxious about what a leader's going to do, am I going to lose my job? You're actually opening up the conversation with people and creating that psychological safety. So that's an abstraction ladder. Google it, YouTube it, whatever your learning preference is. The world accommodates you now. What I thought I'd do is, if it's okay with you, normally this takes about half an hour to an hour, but I would like you guys to get a little bit of a feel how we might use technology of this exact group in a very simple way to get a bit of convergent thinking. So with your permission, I'm going to do this, but we're going to keep it really, really simple. And all I ask is, can we just do it step by step together? And I want you to get a bit of a feel of what's possible. Is that okay? Amazing. So folks, step one is I would like you to grab your beautiful mobile devices. And what I'd like you to do is either scan in, and I'm sure most of us know how to scan in, given we've had practice over the last year of doing this. But if you're not a scanner, please use your browser on your phone, preferably Chrome if you've got that, and go to ahaslides.com/starships and just wait. And I'm going to do the same. All right, it looks like we've got 21 people in, 22. We got some thumbs up, 24 people in. Outstanding. So I would now like you to push ask a question. So once you push that, that'll allow you to type an answer. So the question I want to ask you is, why is complexity such a problem in your organization? And please type your answer and just push submit. And if anyone gets lost or gets off their phone, the link is at the top. Because there is so much unknown. Fear of the lost. Too many silos. Love it. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you. We've got 12, 13 responses. So look at all these different perspectives we're stitching together. 18, 19. Look at this. You guys are quick. All right, so as you're answering, you can now see below the area where you're going to write the question, you can now vote on which one you think is the most relevant right now. So the way to vote is there's a little thumbs up, read through some of these answers and put a thumbs up next to the answer you think is the most relevant. Right, have we all voted? Oh, we've got some tough ones here. Keep the votes coming in. We look like we've got fear of loss of knowledge, too many silos, people getting caught in the noise because they lack clarity on the why. Excellent. Wonderful. Fear of loss of knowledge seems to be a big one. Okay. So what I'm going to do is the ones, and this is where the group thinking comes in. We can see what's relevant for a group in terms of it. So I'm just going to mark the low voting ones as answered. Bear with. And then we're going to do the next round. So wait for me. So do you see how you can do this very live, very in the moment? And let's go with number 7. People get caught in the noise because they lack clarity of the why. So again, I'm going to ask you why. Why is that a problem? And why does this happen in your organization? And once again, please submit your answers. So we've got this very much going on. Communication and listening. Lack of common understanding. I like that one. Awesome. Keep them coming in. We've got 8 questions. The why isn't clear. Excellent. And not just the why isn't clear, the why isn't clear to each person. Wonderful. 18 responses. Now, you know what to do if you've already answered. Go ahead and have a look at what the other answers are and notice what your peers are saying. You might see things that are similar. You might see things that, oh, I didn't think of that. And what I'd like you to do again is vote for a new answer that really gets us closer to the clarity. Oh, wow. I love seeing all these votes coming in. Like, especially as a change manager, it's like, whew, look at all my work getting done for me thanks to mobile technology. All right. So don't forget to get your votes in. Oh, look at that. What's coming up as number 1. Not enough time spent on understanding the problem. And we say, if you spend that time up front, little bit of time up front, you can save so much pain later. Instead of trying to shoot from the hip like a cowboy or a cowgirl or a cow person, let's rather say, to be politically correct. All right. So I think we have a very, very clear winner now. So I'm going to mark these as answered. And by the way, this tool I'm using is called Aha Slides. So there are so many different tools you can use to facilitate this, but this works so simple and easy that we actually run a lot of HCD in it. So are you ready for the last round? So there's not enough time spent on understanding the problem. Why? Why is that not occurring in your organization? And once again, final round, give me your answer. And again, Christina's put the link in there. So if you do push exit or you get lost out of it, just go to that link Christina's put in there and you can join us. So why? Why are we not spending enough time? Pressure from above to get quick wins. Busyness, this fixation with the B word. Rapid push from executives. So it seems like something's happening at the top here that might actually change. And I'm so glad people are saying this, because this is one of our biggest challenges in Earth to Mars, to help that upper layer of leadership to get over their fear of not having to know everything and jump to a solution, but allowing that curiosity and exploration. And the organizations we do that with and the change managers we've trained to do that get incredible results. All right, so you know the drill again. Once you've submitted, vote for your favorite one, and let's see what comes at the top. People go straight to, I love these answers, folks. I will be sharing this in the LinkedIn group. So Christina's going to give you a link a bit later if you haven't joined Space for Change LinkedIn. And we'll also share all this content. It's so easy to export. So folks, get a vote. I love this. No forum for collaboration to share different perspectives. Looks like that's our number 1. Keep voting. All right, so for time, I'm going to go with that one. And you see, I just mark as answered. So do you see how this translates virtually? Like, you know, if this was face-to-face, we'd use Post-its and flip charts, but technology has come so far and been so humanized, we can actually use these tools in a Zoom. So here's our problem, is there's not enough time spent on understanding the problem. People get caught in the noise because they lack clarity, and there's no forum for collaboration to share different perspectives. Now, how about we jump into solutioning? So I'm going to go to the next slide. If that is our problem that we're trying to solve, how specifically might we make the complex simple in our organization? And I want to hear your ideas. So just make sure the slide has moved. There we go. And don't forget to push submit. So if there's this pressure from the top, if there's no forum to collaborate, what's the solution here from this amazing group? And let's stitch it together. Anthony, no problem. If you look at that little link, if you just type that into your browser. Collaboration platforms like Confluence that enable two-way communication. Amazing. Broaden the input from diverse groups. We talk about diversity and inclusion, but it's so much more. It's diversity of thought. It's diversity of ideas as well that real organizations are harnessing now. Honest communication. So something to do around honesty and transparency. Co-creation. Let's work with people. I tell you, when we've co-created solutions to what's going on now with lockdown with our clients, amazing stuff happens. And you don't have to go to the obvious, is just remove headcounts. So you'll be surprised what you can get. Look how fantastic. Look at all these solutions from this group, folks. Now that took what? 10 minutes? 10 minutes to get all this juicy, beautiful data. And what I would then do is work with this group to debrief this, to vote. And then now we've scoped it out and we can start working on, well, who do we need to help? What do we need to do? Look at these great examples. It's a skills thing. Absolutely. We're doing a lot in that space, particularly around upskilling people around the mindset of collaboration, but it's also a facilitation school. Transparency and retrospectives. I love that. And make those retrospectives available, and it's okay to fail. Folks, fantastic answers there. I'm going to be sharing this in the LinkedIn group, so you've got some of these ideas. But have a play. My advice to you is go check out our house slides, have a play, go research an abstraction ladder, and give it a good go. And please share with us in the LinkedIn group as well of how that went. So that is just a little taster of what's possible in a small group of what diverse people, an intercontinental group of people between America, Australia, and all over the world. And look what we were able to do together. What are your thoughts? Pretty awesome, right? So much you can do in 10 minutes. So with that said, I would now like to hand over to the amazing Sabrina as well as Jason from 06. I met these guys, I think last year over the whole pandemic period. And this is what I've loved about the gifts of the pandemic is it's allowed us to connect with people in so many different ways and particularly outside of our comfort zones. So the more I speak to Sabrina and Jason, the more aligned I feel we are when it comes to this type of thinking. And I never realized that the military was doing such incredible things already, that every organization, whether you're public sector, private sector, or just a civilian, can truly leverage to bring that forward and make it real. So Sabrina, handing over to you. The space station is yours. And I believe Jason and Sabrina will be available for Q&A towards the end of the session as well. So over to you, Zeb.
Thank you, Andrew, Christina, Hugo. Thank you so much for inviting us to join the Space for Change. We're just incredibly thrilled, and how exciting to be able to see what the audience is thinking live, so we can actually be able to connect some of the things that we're talking about directly to some of these issues that you think, or actually solutions that you've come up with. So I personally am a huge fan of human-centered design. I've always been, and Andrew, thank you for showing this demonstration. We know there's a huge assortment of other tools out there that I'm sure that you have your hands on. So please contact him if you always need more examples as well. So I wanted to also introduce you to Jason, who is on the call as well. I don't know if his camera is showing or not. You can give a wave, Jason. We are excited to be here together to help complement some of the material that Andrew came up with today. And what we're going to be really talking about is how you as a leader can create a workplace environment that regularly breaks down complexity to manageable bite sizes of solutions and implementation. And what we're doing, as Andrew said, we're drawing from the military, and I'll explain that in just a moment. Before I want to introduce ourselves a little bit first too. So a little bit about us. I'm going to brag on Jason first, right? So Jason's been, out of the military for 5 years, but he was previously with the military for 24 years. And he retired as a lieutenant colonel. And what that meant was he led about 600 soldiers. And during his tenure, he actually spent nearly 3 years of his life in combat in Afghanistan on the ground. So he's a fantastic veteran, has a wealth of military experience. I, on the other hand, am a civilian. I worked for a nonprofit looking at leadership issues with the DoD for the past 2 decades. So I'm very intimately familiar with what the military is doing in terms of leadership. So collectively together, we have about 50 years of experience of coaching, teaching, and mentoring military leaders. So not only does that make us sound super old, but it actually just demonstrated when we were seeing time and time again, these military leaders who brought these amazing skill sets to the table as it relates to leadership and decision making and how it affects our current environment, which is, incredibly complex. So what we did, we came together and formed the 06 group, and our goal is to be able to educate the civilian sector what the value of military leadership, and that's what we're going to be talking to you today. So, why the military? Let's see, switch the slides. Military, as you know, oops, back one. Okay. I've got dual control with Andrew, so we're going to be combating. Thank you. So the military, as you know, operates in a number of different spheres, right? So here's a demonstration of the different domains that they operate in. But it wasn't really until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 is actually when things started getting even more complex. And that's when, in the early 90s, the term VUCA was coined. VUCA means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, which is basically what we're facing right now. Hello, pandemic. So in the early 90s, our US military's mission expanded tremendously. So the national security, and so the military was responsible for anything related to national security, which basically meant anything from combat to counterterrorism, to counterinsurgency, to civilian authority support, peacekeeping, and then of course their own training. So keep in mind that these soldiers have little to no experience in any of these things that they're responsible for. So they just had to figure it out. And then you add the complexity of the 9/11 attack on the US. And that's when things really started to get really hazy, because the enemy became an elusive target. So who exactly are we fighting at this point? So now fast forward to today, and the military soldiers here are now having to figure out how to operate in what's known as the gray zone. And the gray zone is the period right before you hit conflict. So things like election meddling, information warfare, these are things that they're having to deal with and figure out how to operate within. So it does sound complex, doesn't it? So what did the military do? And they had to figure it out, what they did, and they also have to win in any circumstance. So that's what the expectation is. And so what they had to do was focus inward and then focus on the capability and the capacity of their people. And so what you'll see in this next slide is General James McConville, who is the head leader of the US Army, which is basically encompasses about a little over 1 million soldiers. And his number one priority that he has stated once he's entered into his position is people first. Nothing else matters, people first. And that's how we know that the military is using human-centered leadership to be the most number one weapon against complexity. And what's interesting about all this, and why I gave you this background, is that right now the private sector is actually going through some of the same transitions, the same challenges, the same evolution. So there's a lot of parallels to draw from this. So I will go to the next slide. So how does the military put people first, right? A lot of times when people are thinking about this, first thing they think of is command and control, which is true. You know, this is the process that commanders and commanding units actually use to plan, direct, coordinate, and control the assets to actually accomplish the mission. It explains who's in charge, what the chain of command is. This all makes sense because ultimately somebody at the end of the day has to make a decision. But what you may not realize and be familiar with is the military's culture of leadership. And that's what's called mission command. And that's the way the military empowers their people, gives them the vision, gives them the clarity, the roles and responsibilities, and lets them run with it. So there's a decentralized execution. There's a lot of freedom and innovation that works within their roles and on the ground, what they're able to control in their spheres of influence. So this makes the military more agile in fluid environments. And what this all means is that all players on the team understand what the coach's vision is, right? And then they know what their part is to actually making the home run. So in all of this as well, what's encouraged is initiative and innovation so that each individual on the ground has an understanding of what they need to do to take advantage of different opportunities as they arise, not having to run it up the chain of command. They know that if an opportunity arises, they can, even if it's a high level of uncertainty and ambiguity, they know what to do, and it's okay. Someone's got their back. This is how mission command is how you give the power to your people. So how does this relate to you, right? And Jason and I translated mission command into what's called the hierarchy of organizational agility. You'll see we've overlaid it with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you'll see some of the parallels with it. And with this hierarchy, you'll be able to, your organization and your team will be able to operate and anticipate in complex situations. And if you implement all of these components, you'll actually be able to be ready and prepared in any situation, but actually be able to shape the outcomes. So you have control over what the future looks like. Of course, not 100%, but it gives you more control as a team. So you've probably heard a lot about, of talk of establishing trust and competence and vision and risk taking. And this is the how. This is how you do it. And what you see is that you hear corporations saying you should accept more risk as a team, more risk acceptance. What does that mean? It's unfortunate, but I think corporations have it a little bit backwards, where they start off with risk acceptance as the first step, where in fact there's a lot of other factors that need to be placed in place to be able to get to that point. And that's what we'll go through on this slide. So looking at this pyramid, which there's a theme here, we love pyramids and triangles. We'll start with the foundation. So as a leader, you will establish trust, right? And that you'll invite camaraderie through developing a common purpose. This is the why. This is the why your organization, your team are doing the things that you're doing. And then once you get everyone to understand the common purpose and get them on the same page as well, you couple it with professional development. That's developing intentional competence. That's where you actually put people that are on your team in the field, trial by fire, placing them in uncomfortable situations so they can actually make mistakes, so that you as a leader can coach them through these decision-making process so that they feel comfortable with what their role is. Again, coaching is a huge component of this. And it has to be uncomfortable situations too. Comfortable ones are way too easy, right? So we had just had to, because of the triangles, we had to just create a parallel and show the overlay. Let's see if it'll come up. With his divergent thinking. Andrew, you might have to do it. It's not liking me. There you go. Okay. We can go, yeah. So also you'll see that the divergent, this bottom layer is the divergent thinking, and that's where you really don't have any restrictions to what you're thinking. So on the vision, I'm going to go back. Andrew, if you could undo maybe 3 of them, that would be fantastic. Awesome, thanks. So with the your vision as a leader, this is what we call the military statement of intent. So what is your team's purpose? Why is your team important in doing this? What does success look like, and how do you get there? And this is also where you can use human-centered design to collectively come in and work together to figure out what those methods of delivering the vision is. And it's fantastic here. Next level is the process optimization level. No good pyramid would be great without governance, right? So you have to have some structure to be able to address the clarity problems, the accountability issues. So this process is the governance and the decision-making cycle. The cadence method is what happens behind the scenes. It's organic to your organization. You test it, you continually refine it, and this is where the rubber hits the road. And I'll go into more detail with this process optimization tier, just because there's a lot of great things that you might be able to use from that as well. So at the pinnacle, now that your people have been trained, they've had exposure, they're experienced, and now that they feel empowered because they trust you, each individual team member can now have the confidence, the proactiveness, and excitement to be able to start making these decisions and take calculated risks and be do it frequently. And that's kind of how you break complexity down, because you address some of the problems before they are problems. This is how you get your team there. So change is fast, and the VUCA environment's incredibly unpredictable. I'm going to ask a few questions and answer it myself, so I'm just going to be rhetorical. How do you encourage initiative and stay synchronized towards a common objective? How do you streamline the communication so that the right information gets to the right person? So how you do that is through this next method, which is the further of description of the process optimization. Magic. So this is the cadence method. In CADE, we thought we were really crafty. And of course, you can't be part of the military without having some sort of acronym, right? The CADE stands for Coordinated Action and Decentralized Execution. So it also, we're playing on the word cadence. You got rhythm, and it's a routine. And this is the structure that you actually are able, if you have the structure, you're actually able to give your people the freedom to innovate and do the things that they need to do. And in the military, this particular process, it happens at all levels, anywhere from training, education, all the way up to combat. So it's the same method that's being used throughout the entire organization, throughout all of the different decisions that are being made. So you can imagine that this process becomes really ingrained in people's minds, and it becomes second nature. And Jason and I believe this is really applicable to your organization. You could take this and apply it to how your organization, what your organization needs. There's a lot of alignment with human-centered design as well, and what Mars is doing as well. So I won't go through each one of these stages, but I will give you 5 key points to be able to, as it relates to simplifying complexity. So your people, right? With this, the whole point of this we've been talking about is your people. At the heart, you'll see there's the coach, teach, mentor. That's where the people are, and then surrounding it is the governance. So you have to involve your stakeholders up front, because they are the most important people to be able to facilitate any change that's going to be made in your organization. And what's great about this model is that you have people from all levels. You've got junior staff, you've got senior staff, you've got middle managers that are all involved in this process of decision making. And what you're doing is that because you have junior staff that's watching senior staff talk about these things, evaluate and have a conversation and make decisions, then you're actually grooming them to be the future leaders. So you're killing it. This is a terrible analogy, but a lot of birds with one stone, right? So, and not only that, but these junior staff they know what's going on. They know what the big picture is. They can actually go back to their job and actually start taking care of really small issues without it becoming a problem. So the second thing next to your people is situational awareness. This is where it approaches the clarity, having the forum, having the communication, lines of communications. Situational awareness is because this is second nature, the team is going to be so attuned to knowing which critical pieces of information need to be shared with the team that they're constantly doing it. And when you do that, there's a lot of problems that can be fixed quickly so you can avoid pitfalls. So that's situational awareness. The third thing is expectation setting. So you have your clear vision as a leader, you've got your goals, everyone knows what their role is and what they need to do to achieve their outcome in their spheres of influence. So that's another aspect that's really beneficial for breaking down complexity. The fourth is collaboration and communication. I know it's the root of all evil, but we have to address it here because it will solve a ton of problems. And we all know that shared knowledge creates the best outcomes and solutions. It's like the Bible verse of human-centered design, or the golden rule, I guess. And it addresses problems like things like silos, right? So you have communications across the board, the entire organization's involved, you cut through those silos. And you're able to use human-centered design and those types of tools to be able to do this. What's great about the communication and collaboration piece is that you need to understand, and you will understand, what the future looks like. So what are the most probable outcomes? What's the most dangerous scenario? What are the potential opportunities? What are the information gaps? And lastly, like, what is actually the problem? So defining the problem is a huge piece of this. Again, we saw that as a solution. So I hope we hit that as a point. And what's great about this, through the communication collaboration, and you have this knowledge, you're able to pivot and move along with what is going on. So you're not caught in one path. And this is a great way to break down complexity. And lastly, the fifth one is familiarity in times of distress. So we all know that when we're encountering stress and there's a lot of things that are going on, your brain shuts down and you start doing things because we did it last time, or we're converging on the most quickest and easiest solution, right? But because you have this cyclical process, you've already developed a habit, a ritual, so that you can not rely necessarily on your brain, but what your team is able to do. So you're able to already have these methods and processes in place to be able to work through when everyone's really tired and stressed out. So that was a very quick overview of the military. So you're all now certified to go into the US military and do well. I just want to open it up for questions, because I'm sure there's some interesting perspectives that you have to offer. And Jason is going to help me with fielding them.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sabrina. Yep, please pop your questions in the chats. Thank you for this. How amazing. You're getting rounds of applause. I'm seeing people. Any questions from the group, folks? This is the interactive part. So pop them in the chat and we will get through to them. I know Anthony had a question around how this links to concepts like agile. Is this agile and iterative? I think you did touch on it, but maybe if it's okay, just to sort of clarify, in our world, we call things agile.
Sure.
How does that link to what you've shown us? Anthony, have I understood your question?
Andrew, do you mind if I break it, if I move it to just like the view where I can see everyone? Is that okay?
Yeah.
That way I can see Jason too, so you can make sure he's
so
awake.
In the top right, you can change the view.
Awesome. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yep.
All right. Anthony, what was the question? It was a really good one.
It was really about dynamic risk assessments in the aspect of working within a command and control system. Clearly, the command and control system is the overarching layer of how we do command and control. But then the added aspect of a dynamic risk assessment, depending on lessons learned from last incidents or emergencies or programs that you've run, this seems to me to have that element of around a risk assessment attitude that continually keeps going in a circle. So you keep flushing out the things that you don't want to do next time. Is that correct, Sabrina?
That's right. I was going to let Jason answer that. There you are.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer it. You're exactly right. And so we call this the cadence method. And what we did was we sifted through thousands of pages of military doctrine that breaks down their operational design methodology, which mimics the agile process, where it is iterative. I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to assess it, and then we're going to make adjustments. The challenge is, and we address this with a lot of the questions in the first part of the presentation, have to do with, okay, well, the environment's always changing and it's very dynamic. And so the assumptions that I had when we started this planning process are now different at this part of the planning process. And so how do you capture that? How do you actually address a solution that is going to be effective and not just implement a plan for the sake of just implementing some, because you spent all this time planning it? And that's one of the things that the military processes had to get very efficient on doing in very dynamic environments where there's just not a lot of time and space for them to do a lot of these things. And one of the things that they have to consider very dynamically is the risk. What we did with this method is we actually tied risk to decision points. In other words, what's the information that the leader really needs that deals with the risk to what the organization is trying to do? Because I'm sure we've all dealt with where when you're in charge of something, you find that you're getting completely inundated with emails. And maybe only a third of them is stuff that's relevant for you to deal with. Well, how do you filter that? How do you build in the processes so that when it comes to risk management, you're more efficient and you can build off of that information? And that's what we tried to build into this process.
Thank you for that, Jason, Sabrina. We've got a question from Ram. Hey, Ram, good to see you. I think we're on another session tonight as well, so you get a double dose of Ram for me. Can you elaborate on communication? How does the military gauge acceptance, comprehension, and translation of what you communicate into new behavior? Great question.
I can't see the question. Could you...
It's in the chat. So
okay,
if you have a look
can
at
you
the
elaborate
chat,
on communication? Yeah. So when we talk about the communication piece in this model, the military has a very structured way that they do this, right? They have the orders process where they publish actual written orders, and it's so dynamic in combat that it's done every day. And so there's a whole methodology of funneling information to facilitate the communication. A lot of what Sabrina and I are talking about here is structuring how you're going to communicate in a dynamic environment. In other words, this is the information that the boss needs. This is the format for our messaging. Like in the Pentagon, one of the requirements we had was to do screenshot messaging. In other words, if I type a message to a leader, it's got to fit on a single page without scrolling to really put the bottom line up front. And these are some of the techniques that we talk about in order to streamline communication so that the information that's getting to the boss is really the information the boss needs, which we know because they've communicated that through that statement of intent about this is what we're doing, here's the method, here's the big things. And so we actually detail all the strategies for how you can be more efficient in your communication. We gauge acceptance and comprehension by two methods. The first one is the brief back method. And we actually detail this where as a part of the process, one of the things that leaders do is that they will receive feedback from people in general of, hey, what is your understanding of this plan? How do we do this? And they not just do it in that forum, but as they're going around and they're interacting with the different teams that are going out there, they're gauging it by asking the question at the most forward points in the organization to see that the message that they've sent equals the message that's received. And it's an active dialogue. It's not a, hey, do you know what's going on? It's open-ended questions. What is your understanding of what you have to do here? Where do you go if you need help? And that's the kind of dynamic feedback that we utilize in order to ensure that, hey, message sent equals message received, because as you, especially in an echeloned organization, as you go down those echelons, that message can be warped or it could change depending upon how people filter it. And so that's the mechanism that we use to validate that.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Jason. Time for one more question before Christina wraps us up. This one seemed to resonate. All these questions are great, but I'm looking at this. This got response. Marianne, having junior staff around while seniors make decisions would really go a long way towards familiarizing them with the vision as it is set. However, in business, we tend to keep executives separate and only communicate to lower layers in the organization sporadically. Do you have suggestions on how to motivate for actually changing this in the private sector?
Great question. And I think that is also something that is very unique in terms of the military, where we bring people into that. And to me, it's about communicating the understanding about what coaching, teaching, and mentoring from the perspective of the leader can do. It seems like there's a gap between I've got to do my job and I'm not understanding how to embrace coaching and teaching, mentoring as a primary function of my job. And so by being able to communicate that so that they understand that, hey, look, if I help them understand what's going on in my head when I make this decision, the next time that this situation comes up, they don't have to ask me. They'll already know. And when it comes to them building a plan or coming up with ideas, they're going to kind of know what I'm looking for. That's the benefit to them. The benefit to the person is that development, the understanding of the bigger picture. And so I think a lot of what times it happens is we're so mission focused that we're not, we outsource coaching, we outsource mentoring, we outsource executive education. And what I'm saying is okay, well, if you're going to be not in charge, but a leader, you have to take some of these responsibilities on. And once you do, and you accept that, you're going to want to do these kinds of activities. So it's really about educating the benefits of what this can do for the organization and for the individual and for the leader. It's going to make their job easier too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Great questions, great participation. Can I ask a favor, guys? Can everyone come off mute and give a huge round of applause to 06 Jason as well as Sabrina?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I absolutely love this. Well done. Absolutely love this. I'm going to hand over to Christina to wrap up, but this is where I love human-centered design personally. I think what I like, instead of directly challenging your executives and saying, you need to change your mindset, we do it in an indirect way and just call it a workshop. And what's great is they then get to see the other perspectives without being put on the spot or demanded to change or tickling their fears. So I'm loving this alignment between what happens in the military. And I think what you guys are doing, bringing this content into our space in the public and private sector is phenomenal. So thank you from Christina and myself from the bottom of our hearts. So Christina, over to you, my change soulmate.
Thank you. So much love. I love this. Guys, thank you so much. Sabrina, that was absolutely fantastic. Again, there are so many opportunities where we can leverage your knowledge and Jason, your knowledge, and bring in your experience straight into our organizations, public or private, exactly as Andrew said. So we really appreciate this. Guys, if you really love this session, stay connected with us. Space for Change, join our LinkedIn Space for Change group. There are Space for Change archives coming, which will give you access to previous Space for Change recordings, micro-learning, bite-sized pieces as well that you'll be able to access. So you can never lose sight of all of this great content that you're learning. If you love this session, we'd love to learn about your feedback. And if you're interested, we actually have early bird pricing that ends on Saturday for our USA November course and for our Sydney October course. So if you're interested in joining our courses with the early bird pricing, just scan that code with your phone and pop a little note in the form when you fill that out and indicate that you're interested. And last but not least, we have these really cool digital credentials that we have now set up for everyone who completes our courses and is an alumni. So it is a credential, it is officially recognized across the board globally, and it's a credential that follows you no matter where you go. So it's a huge achievement, and it means the world to hear that many people around the world are getting on board with human-centered ways of working and human-centered change management strategy development. Ultimately, it means more successful projects. We can eventually stop asking, why does it always fail? And I'm so pumped to hear about that. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for participating. Look forward to hearing more about you. And The link to the form, if you didn't scan the little barcode, is in the chat as well. And Hugo's just posted that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. And also let us know what topics you're interested in, because what we do in the LinkedIn group is we put that out and we all then vote on the topic. And that's how our monthly Space for Change event works. So it's all human-centered design and it's all for you, by you. So thank you, folks. What a great session. Thanks, Christina. Thanks to our speakers, but mostly thank you for being our community of Force for Good people going out there and go out there and make the world a bit more human, particularly in our businesses where we spend so much time. Thank you, everyone. Lots of love and have an intergalactic day wherever you are in the world. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good night.
everyone. Bye.